Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us. As I just said, we are recording this, and this is going to be, don't feel that you need to memorize everything that we say today as we say it, because we're going to be uploading it to the unlisted YouTube channel, so you can rewatch and stuff. Yep, so Scott just said in the chat, if you guys keep the chat open, if you have questions while we're going, you can just shout out, but if you don't feel like shouting out, Scott has got the chat on his tablet, so he'll be able to answer your questions because I won't see them if I'm sharing the screen. So this is going to be the first of 4 training sessions we're doing in the run up to bat season. Hopefully bat season will happen. But I hope everybody's well. Happy New Year for those of you who I haven't spoken to yet. So we are just going to start by sharing the screen. No. Try again.
I just want to double check that I can.
Oh, God. Double check that you can what?
I can draw on it.
All right. My computer's playing. Okay.
Okay, so fancy this.
Hold on.
Wait.
Yeah. Awesome. That's lovely. Feel free to delete that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. All right, everybody. As I said, I've muted everyone for the time being because we're getting some quite bad feedback, but feel free to unmute yourselves. And you can, as I said, just shout out if you have questions or just type questions to Scott in the chat. Can you hear both of us, by the way?
No.
Someone give us a thumbs up if you can hear Scott as well.
Yeah, I can hear both of you.
Great. Thank you, Sally.
Amazing.
Okay, so this is sort of part 1 of 2 bat identification and assessment. I sort of changed around the way that I was going to do things because we were going to do the cryptic species sort of later on, and then we decided that basically we would do all of the ID in this one session, and then next time we'll be doing sort of sexual assessment and age class assessment and stuff like that of bats. It is yeah, so basically we're going to go through all of the ID stuff today, and then if you have any questions and stuff, you can always ask us. It's all in the same PowerPoint, so I'll be able to refer back to this when we do the next session as well. So basically, over the course of the 2 sessions, we're going to look at identification of bats, but also determination of sex, age class, and breeding condition. So on we go. So part 1. What we're going to look at today is briefly we're going to talk about the species assemblage in the UK and what species are present. What species are present in the county. We're going to look at basic bat anatomy, and we're going to go through ID to genus, and then ID of Nyctilus, Pipistrellus, small and large myotis. And then we're also going to look at some cryptic species, so identification of common large myotis, separating Natterers and Bechsteins, and also separating some small myotis using things like dentition. So it's going to get a bit advanced towards the end, but do not worry, you will get practice in the field, in theory, if we're ever allowed outside again, you know. Okay, in the UK, we have 17 species comprising 7 genera. So we have 2 families of bats. We have Vespertilionidae, the Vesper bats, and the Rhinolophidae, which is the horseshoe bats. And this is how it breaks down: 3 pips, 2 brown long-eareds, 2 Nyctilus, 1 Aptesicus, 6 myotis, and 1 Barbastellus. But in our county, we have 12 of those. Anybody want to hazard a guess, either via text or verbally, which species we don't have in our county?
Grey long-eared for 1.
Yeah, we don't have grey long-eared. That's 1. I'm going to chat.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. GHS,
Yeah, greater horseshoe. We're missing 2 meiotis.
Oh, we're still.
Yeah, Barbara
Yeah.
Stell.
Becky, you're not allowed to answer.
Becky, you're banned.
Big time.
Yeah. And 1 more. Yes, good job, Elizabeth Al-Kathawi. All right, so yeah, those are the ones we don't have yet. This is just a brief word of warning. You are going to hear us occasionally talk about pelage as an identifying feature as we go through this, and pelage is something that's sometimes characteristic and always useful, but you should never go on pelage. When I very first started training in mammals many years ago, the first thing that I was taught was you just don't go on pelage. And it's absolutely applicable for bats. So when you hear us throughout the course of this workshop today mention pelage, it is just an additional feature. It is not what you would use to actually make your determination. We go on in anatomical features, not the color of their fur. And the reason for that is because pelage is subjective. So what you consider to be chocolate brown, someone else might consider to be gingery brown or light brown. And also it's variable depending on things like the age of the bat and individual populations of bats. And also it's seasonal. You know, as at different times of year, bats will have different pelage as they go through different, as they molt their fur. Yeah. Which is all of these are reasons why it's not reliable. And just generally, we would expect you to know to learn and know the anatomical differences between the different species. So.
You'll probably hear the word buff as well.
Buff.
People say buff, and that just equals grey. So,
see, I think buff as being like blonde,
that's
like
what,
pale.
Yeah.
See, this is why it's subjective, because people just
Yeah, that's when you always hear that. Oh,
blondie grey.
I remember John saying, oh, the more buff, the more buff. And I remember for like a good 6 months thinking, I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So it's subjective, and what people mean by different words they use to describe pelage is different as well. So, which is why we try and stick to things that are solid. So
I sound distant and muffled.
Didn't they say this last time and we ended up just unplugging it?
Yeah, I don't know why.
Let's just unplug it. Does that sound any better? Speak, Scott.
Is that better for me? Answers on a postcard.
Yeah, or just thumbs up or thumbs down, or
Yeah, is it better like that?
Does the sound any better?
Going in and out a bit.
Going in and out.
Yeah, that's just so. Okay.
And plug back in. All right, we'll try. If there's anything that you don't catch, then just ask us to repeat it. All right, we're back on headphones again now.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit about anatomy, because I want you, when I'm going to basically, I know that some of you have been with us for a few years, and I guess it doesn't hurt to have a refresher, but I know a lot of you are also very new, and so you need a bit of a basic grounding in bat anatomy. So the first thing I want you to have a look at is the picture on the left, and that is how the bones in a bird's wing and a human's wing relate to the bones in a bat's wing. So you can see that the upper arm bone is quite short, the forearm is quite long, and basically the wing is supported by the fingers. So a lot of people don't quite a lot of people are surprised to realize that, but basically the main structure of the wing, especially sort of the outside part of the wing, is supported by the fingers. And this gives them a lot of flexibility and maneuverability in their flight. Obviously, finger bones are more fragile than arm bones, and so it makes their wings more fragile. The word Chiroptera, which is the group of animals that bats comprise, means hand wing. So what I want you to think about as we go forward as well, we're going to use words like proximal and distal. So you see here on the right hand side, there's like the Da Vinci guy. The way that I remember it is that when you see him, he faces forward. His hands are facing forward. And when we say something is proximal or distal, proximal means closest to the body and distal means furthest away from the body. So when we talk about the proximal finger, we mean the pinky finger. When we talk about the distal finger, we're coming this way. I don't know if you can see me. Yes, you can. Okay. So basically, just get that into your head a little bit, and if you get confused, just think like Da Vinci guy stands with his hand facing forward. So this is the one closest to the body, so this is the proximal one. So we're going to go through a bit of anatomical terminology now. So you have basically here a simple illustration of the different parts of the bat's body. So the patagium is the membrane that stretches between the parts of the bat's body and it forms the surface of the wing. The patagium is it's not dead skin, it's full of blood vessels. If it tears, it will heal and it can have scar tissue. And basically the different parts of the patagium have different names. So the chiropatagium is the hand, as in chiroptera, hand wing. The plagiopatagium is the oblique. So if you think about doing sit-ups for your oblique muscles, they're the sides of your body. So the oblique, the plagiopatagium is here, the side between the proximal finger and the side of the bat. That's forearms here.
Oh no, yeah. Yeah.
So and then the uropatagium is the tail membrane, and those are basically the only real complicated words. You have the interfemoral membrane is another word for the uropatagium. And interfemoral means just between the femurs, so between the legs. And two other key pieces of information are of terminology are the calcar, which is this little spur that comes from the ankle of the bat, and it supports the tail membrane. And the other one is the tragus, which is your bit people sometimes get pierced, the little bit that sticks up in front of your ear, and that is a key feature for bats. Interesting thing is that tragus comes from the Latin for goat, because apparently it's the part of the ear where when men get old, they get like a little tuft of hair on it and it looks like a goat beard, apparently. Allegedly. My dad has that. My dad also has like crazy owl eyebrows as well. But yeah. So of these features, the things that we're going to be looking at to help us with our identification of bats are the shape, size, length, and breadth of the tragus. We're going to be looking at basically the general features of the face, whether they have a nose leaf. We're going to be looking at the wing venation. And when we say venation, it's not veination, they're not veins. It's the supporting structures within the patagium itself. So we say venation, but it's not meant in that sense. We're also going to be looking at the shape and length of the calcar, and we're going to be looking at the genitalia. And we're going to be looking at sometimes the length of the thumb. And then also we're going to be looking at the knuckle bones when it comes to aging. And so that will be something we look at next time. So the ones that we're focusing on this summer are in red, the ones for next week are in yellow. But basically this, we look at the calcification of knuckles, and this is always the last knuckle to calcify. So it calcifies from the thumb down to the pinky finger. So right, onward. So the tragus are these little fancy projections in the front of the ear, and as you can see, they're very variable. So they can either be absent, not there at all, as in the Rhinolophus, shaped like a mushroom, as in the Nyctilis species, finger-shaped, or some people say banana-shaped. I think they're more finger-shaped. Pipistrellus epithecus species, and pointed in Myotis, and kind of pointed but very broad in Placotis and Barbastellus. So just to point these out a bit more specifically, this is what you're looking at. And this, when you handle a bat, when you go to start doing ID in the bat, this is the first thing that you're going to look at. Even if you pick a bat out of a net or out of a trap or out of a bat box, and you know what that bat is, I expect you to go through this process because everybody makes mistakes. And so directly correlates with calls. Oh, you could just say it in words.
Oh, no.
He's playing with his new tablet.
There's like an evolutionary significance to why they came like that. There's a very nice diagram in either Dietz or Ross, the shape of the bat's wings, the shape of the bat's tragus, the shape of the bat's claw.
Can't hear you very well, Scott.
Ah, okay. Give me a headphone. So there's like a direct link between the shape of the bat's wings, the shape of the bat's tragus, the shape of the bat's claw, and all those three things correlate evolutionary. So they've all evolved alongside each other to enable the
Feel
bat.
very distant sounding for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bear headphones.
You do. I don't have any that have a microphone.
Oh, that's alright.
So we'll just, if you need, just grab this if you want to, just you need to talk. All right. So the other thing that we're going to be looking at is the calcar, which is the sort of cartilaginous spur that supports the tail membrane. And this can either be S-shaped, like you can see here, or it can be straight, like you can see here. It can be a short one, or it can be a very long one. And the length and the shape of this calcar is also diagnostic and helps us to separate a couple of cryptic species. Another thing that we'll be looking at is the post-calcareal lobe. So if you can see this, they can't see my cursor, so can you highlight?
What are we doing?
The PCL, yeah. So you'll just hear us say this as PCL. But yeah, so this is this little flap of skin on the outside edge of the calcar, and it will be on both sides of the tail. And this is variable according to species. So Pipistrellus have quite a big one, Nyctilus have quite a big one, and Epithecus and Barbastellus also have one, but it tends to be very reduced, and so it's not something that you would be like, oh wow, it really definitely has one. So this is one of the things that especially when you're starting out, you definitely want to kind of get your eye in separating, say, Pipistrellus species from Myotis species, or even if you've got a serotine and you want to compare a serotine, not that we really catch them, but compare a serotine to a noctule or a Leisler's. It's one of the things that you can use to help separate them because it's very developed in Nyctilus and Pipistrellus species. So here we go. We are going to start separating these out now, and this will take you through the kind of the field method that we use. The first thing that we do is we separate to family. The next thing we do is separate to genus based on the tragus shape. We only have one member of the Rhinolophidae in our county. And the way that you would know is whether it has a nose leaf. So you can see from these illustrations, they have these beautiful, elaborate nose leaves. Okay. You can use the mic on your tablet?
Yeah.
I think we might get feedback.
No,
oh wait, plug into it.
No, I can't plug into it.
You can't plug it into your tablet?
No, there's nothing. Don't worry about it.
What? Madness. Okay.
All right, so basically, does it have this beautiful elaborate nose leaf and a lack of a tragus? And if that both of those things are true, then it is a Rhinolophidae, and the only Rhinolophidae we have in the county. is Rhinolophus hipposideros, which is the lesser horseshoe bat. Other parts of the country, the other candidate would be a greater horseshoe bat. They are separated on size, which we'll talk a bit about later on. You've got text coming through.
Morgan, you've gone quiet.
Fuck's sake.
Is that better? Yes?
Yes.
All right, okay. So basically, I'm going to go back then just in case. So does the bat have a nose leaf and a lack of a tragus? If that's the case, it's going to be a Rhinolophus. And the only one we have in the county is Rhinolophus hipposideros. So it's a lesser horseshoe bat. When we get to the point where if we do occasionally catch lesser horseshoe bats, and handling for lesser horseshoe bats is very different to handling for other species of bats, because they have just a completely different sort of type of anatomy, because of the way that they hang up, and the shape of their body is a lot less flattened, and they require particular handling. So if that's something that you want to learn to do once you've got your once you've got the hang of handling other species, then that's what we can do. All right, so now the rest of the bats that you're going to find, none of them have a nose leaf. I suppose you could, not that we get them, but if you had a Barbastelle, do look like at first glance that they have a very elaborate face, and I suppose that you could confuse that, but they do have quite a pronounced, very broad triangular tragus. So, and they're also very, very, very dark bats. But we'll talk about that in a bit. So the rest of the bats we're looking at are Vesper bats, and we are taking it down to the shape of the tragus to tell us what genus we are looking at. So mushroom-shaped tragus is Nyctilus, and only Nyctilus species. A pointed tragus is a Myotis or a Placotis, and a finger-shaped tragus is a Pipistrellus or Aptesicus. So the first thing we're going to do is go, all right, if it has a pointed tragus, we need to know whether it's Myotis or Placotis. If the ears are whopping great ears as long as the body, is a Placotis. The only one we have is Placotis auratus, brown long-eared bat, and so that is, they are, as soon as you see one, you'll obviously know that it's a brown long-eared bat. But the key is, I want you to go, right, pointed tragus. Are the ears as long as the body? Yes, and then it's Placotis auratus, because we want you to go through that, not just go on jizz, just to actually go, mentally go through the process of going, right, tragus, genus, and then separate it. So, but this separates out two of our species straight away. We've done our lesser horseshoe, and we've done our brown long-eared bat. So onward. Mushroom tragus. So we have two species of Nyctilus. We have noctule and we have Leislers. And the way that we separate these is largely on size. Essentially, a Leislers is basically like half a noctule, but there is the possibility that you could, oh my God, it looks like it's got earrings. It's so good. There is a possibility that you could have a very young noctule or a very small noctule, and you'd have some confusion. The sweet spot with separating them is 47 millimeters. So you'll be looking at measuring the forearm. And generally speaking, the weight is around 19-20 grams, which separates. There's very, very little overlap. Now, this is going to be another one of those situations where we talk about pelage. You can see from these photos that these are two quite textbook bats for their species. So the noctule at the top is very, very like stout, thickly built, very gingery fur. And the one at the bottom is a slighter bat, and has sort of this lovely chocolate brown fur. But also you can see he has this kind of thick, ruffly mane of fur. So I think Leisler's lion's mane, to help you remember. But again, we would always go through the process of measuring the forearm to be sure and separate them out. Okay, so now we're down to finger-shaped tragus. This is Pipistrellus and Eptesicus. Now, a lot of people sort of like lump Eptesicus in with noctules and Lythers bats, and the reason for that is because they are the three big bats. They all have a very similar call profile when you're doing as you will know if you've been doing the sound analysis Sundays with us. They can be very hard to separate out from a call. They're all high-flying open space foragers and all very similar. And so it is very easy to lump Eptesicus, Ceratine, this is in with noctules and Lythers bats. But essentially, a Ceratine, it just looks like an enormous pipistrelle, This is one that we had in care that you're looking at this picture of. We had him in care for about 1.5 years, and then he was successfully released. And he has, you can't really see his tragus in there very well, but he has a finger-shaped tragus, just like a big pipistrelle. We've never had one of these in the hand apart from in care, and this didn't even come from our county. We do have Ceratine in the county, but they're all records from sound analysis. So it would be very nice to catch them, but we don't come across them very often. We think we've had one at Linley Woods. The other interesting thing about, find it, about Eptesicus is that they have their tail pokes out, the tip of their tail pokes out past the tail membrane. I'm going to try and show you. There you go. So this, if you can get hold of it, is quite a nice old book. So it's Schober, Eckhard, Wilfried Schober and Eckhard Grimmenberger, and then Bob Stebbings is the consultant editor. It's out of print if you can get hold of it secondhand. It's got some really cool old photos and some good illustrations in it. That will help you with ID. Oh my God, okay. So, is it a large bat with its tail projecting past the membrane? Yes, then it's a Ceratine. No, then it's Pipistrelle. Sorry, I don't have COVID, I'm just coughing because I've been talking all day. Right, so to separate our pipistrelles, although they tend to have general pelage differences, which are very common, and other differences in different coloration and other anatomical features, we tend to go on a number of features because none of these are exhaustive and none of them are conclusive. So we look at a number of things, which we're all going to go through now, but we go through wing venation, general pelage, color of genitals, and presence or absence of an internareal ridge. Thanks, okay. And basically we use all of those and we make a decision based on a number of those features. And by and large, most of the bats that we do catch and that we do get in boxes categorically just follow suit. But there occasionally you will get a bat that has one type of venation on one wing and one on the other. So we always go on a number of features. And pelage is the one that we rely on the least because it's so unreliable. So we have wing venation for our three pipistrelles, Pipistrellus, Pygmaeus, and Nethusii. So that's common pipistrelle, Soprano pipistrelle, and Nethusius is pipistrelle. Nethusius is another one of those ones we have not had in the hand in the county. I think that's just the nature of the places that we tend to trap. I don't think it would be important. I mean, impossible. One of them. So basically, I have taken this illustration and I have flipped it so that you can kind of see it from both sides. The reason being because like a lot of times you'll look at a picture and you kind of it's difficult sort of mentally flip it around to see the way it would look if you were looking at the other wing. The other thing is when you're checking wing venation, you will always check both wings. So Nethusius pipistrelle. Well, we'll go through them in a bit more detail, looking at photos, which will help you a lot. But what you're looking for is what we call the gaps between these veins, which aren't veins. The gaps between the lines on the wings are called cells. And you're looking at the cell that is between the elbow and the pinky finger, so the elbow and the proximal digit. So the knuckle will be right here. Thank you, Scott. So this cell here that you're looking at, and then you're also looking at the cell above it. And the idea is that the pattern of those two cells will either form an I, a Y, or an H. So if you can do the, yeah. So common pipistrelle, we'll start with him in the middle, has got his main cell from the elbow to the pinky open, and the cell from the pinky up to the middle of the forearm has a vein across it and is closed. So that makes an I. Pygmaeus soprano pipistrelle has a Y shape because it has both of those cells open. So if you look on the bottom here where Scott has drawn, that forms a Y. Easy way to remember that is Pygmaeus has a Y in it and pipistrelle doesn't. Nathusius has an H in it and neither of the others do, so it has H venation, and we will show that to you in a little bit more detail. There you go. Okay, so Pygmaeus here, if I show you on the next, this is the unannotated version. So here's your pinky finger is down on the right, that little knuckle, and the elbow is on the left-hand side. And these are the veins that we're looking at. So you talk now, obviously you can see that because the patagium is kind of wrinkled, there are microscopic little lines across everywhere. That's not what we're looking at. We're looking at the main lines. And so you can see that this wing has been, you're looking at it with a light shining behind it, by the way. So you're looking at the venation in the wing and to see whether these cells are open. And in the case of this one, it's Pygmaeus. It forms a Y. Both the cells are open. Oh, sorry, Scott. Should I go back?
That's what I was just going to point out.
So this is a common pipistrelle, which has the Y shape, but the top cell has a vein across it. So I'm going to go back up again so I can delete that, and hopefully you can see. So that top cell that goes from the pinky to the forearm is closed off by a line. Yeah, so that is I venation. So it's a pipistrellus. And then Nathusius has H venation, and this is what they mean by that. So basically it has this additional little line. Right, yeah, so Scott's pointing out the scars where this bat has obviously had some minor injuries to its wing and they've healed up. So so I'll show you again. So you can see there's no vein across there, but this is where the vein would be that we're illustrating. So now I'm going to show you. This is a bat that we got at Corporation Wood last year. Does anybody want to hazard a guess as to what kind of venation this has? No, chickens.
Is that an eye?
Anybody else? You got messages coming
Or
through?
maybe a H.
Walleye from Elizabeth. Kristen, I think it's an eye.
No, it's an eye, I think.
Okay, so this is a common pipistrelle, but it has H venation.
Rachel got it right.
So what we're looking at here is the line that splits. So the line from the elbow where my thumb is there to the little pinky knuckle. In a pipistrelle, in both common and soprano pipistrelle, that would be open. Oops. But you can see that there is a line across. So and then also the top one is closed, just like on a normal I venation. So this is H venation, but it's on a common pipistrelle. We checked the dentition, we went through all the things. And we had two bats that had the same thing, but they came in together, and one was a juvenile, one was a female, a Paris female. So we assumed that they probably were mother and pup that had come in. And so, yeah, I mean, it was very confusing. We were very excited. We thought we might have had our first Nothusius in the hand, but it was just a common pip. And the reason we go, this is an example of why we go on multiple features. So this was only on the one wing. It had I venation on one wing and it had H venation on the other wing, and all the other features, including the dentition, were a common pipistrelle. Also, it was small. Nothusius pips are bigger. So these are textbook Pygmaeus and Pipistrellus. So your typical soprano pipistrelle is paler, sometimes even golden and gingery like this is. They tend to have a shorter muzzle, sometimes a slightly upturned like piggy nose, a pale face, and then your common pipistrelle typically has just generic sort of brown fur and a dark face, but we don't go on pelage. Another thing that separates these two species is the smell, and not everybody can smell it. I can definitely smell it. You can smell it, can't you?
Yeah.
So, stops really smell soprano pips. They stink compared to especially males compared to commons. But not, it's one of those things like asparagus ween. I really can smell it. So right. So here you go. There's looking at the two types of. I don't know if I've illustrated this. I haven't. Do you want to draw on that? So here's your two types of wing venation. So in all these pictures, the soprano, the Pygmaeus is on the left, Pipistrellus on the right, and Scott is illustrating that I venation on the right hand side, and then a lovely clean Y venation on the left hand side. Okay. Thank you. Another feature that we look for to separate Pipistrellus is the internarial ridge. And if you look on the left-hand side, you will see a little tiny bump between the nostrils. It is not there on every soprano pipistrelle, but it is very commonly there on soprano pipistrelles, and it is occasionally present, although not usually very well developed on a common pip as well. But if you have Y venation, internarial ridge, golden gingery pelage, stinky bat, then that becomes an overwhelming weight of evidence that it's a soprano and not a common. Okay, so one more thing is the color of the genitals. The genitals, and also I don't actually have any pictures, but the inside, the oral cheek glands, the buccal glands of soprano pipistrelles, and their genitals are orange, and in common pipistrelles it's creamy white. So you can see that, yeah, that very sort of peachy, tangerine-y color. By the way, these genitals belong to this bat, and this is literally the most chilled out bat I've ever handled in my entire life. We're like messing around taking pictures of his junk, and he was just totally chill, just laying there, and he was super cool. But he's a very textbook soprano pipistrelle, and this really illustrates, this picture really illustrates his shortened muzzle compared to a common pipistrelle, which tends to be a bit more forward. He has that little piggy face of a soprano. So just to zip up and reiterate all of these things. So we have our bat, and we are looking at, so the general pelage, he is paler with a pale face and a short muzzle, and the common pip is darker with a dark face and a longer muzzle. Y wing venation for the soprano, I wing venation for the common, internarial ridge for the soprano, no internarial ridge for the common, and the color of the genitalia is peach or orange in the soprano and pale or cream in the common. And so we go through those, all of those features, and make a decision based on those. We don't use any one. So we're now into our straight tragus myotis bats. We tend to split myotis into small myotis and large myotis. Your large myotis being, yeah, this is a Natura's. So your large myotis being Bechsteins, Natterers, and Daubenton's, and your small myotis being Wiskop, Brandt's, and Alcothelli. And generally speaking, just ballparking it, in general, you'll get a bat out, you'll go, it's a myotis, is it small or large? We tend to make that call just through experience visually, because it tends to be quite obvious when you've got a small myotis or a large myotis in the hand, but there is a kind of a general split, and that's at 7 grams. So if you're not entirely sure, you can weigh the bat. Obviously, when you have a smaller bat, obviously if you're certain times of year, say you're trapping in July or August, you're going to get juvenile bats and they'll be smaller. You can't just go on the weight at certain times of year. Now, some times of year, trapping in the spring, there are only adults because the young haven't been born yet, so that you can be a lot more confident using weight to split them up. But there are a number of features that you can go on, basically. And you'll see these in a second that really clearly separate the large myotis from the small myotis, because they have these distinctive features, and the small myotis tend to be a little bit more cryptic, a lot more similar to each other. Large myotis, so this is a Bechstein's bat on the right hand side. What we're going to talk about first is separating Natterers from Daubenton's. Now, as I said, we don't get Bechsteins in our county, so we're not really going to go into a lot of detail about Bechsteins. But so what we're going to concentrate on is separating Natterers from Daubs, because we do get an awful lot of both of those. The calcar, if you remember, we were talking about whether the calcar is S-shaped or whether the calcar is straight. And this is one of the features that you would use to separate Natterers from Daubenton's, because Natterers are the only species that have this strongly S-shaped calcar. The calcar in Daubenton's bat is very, very straight. Natterers bat have recurved ears, and I will show you a photo in a moment that will illustrate that. Daubenton's, oh yeah, Bechsteins also have a straight calcar, so Natterers is the only one with the S-shaped. And Daubenton's have got very large hairy feet. Now, if you have a bat and you only have one bat, it's very difficult to go whether its feet are large or whether its feet are not large, because you haven't got any other bat's feet to compare it to. So it's a bit of a moot point unless you've got more than one species in the hand. But the other thing is, just the general appearance of a Daubenton's can be very sort of like pink faced and sort of goblin-y. And Natterers as well have got these golden hairs on the edge of their tail, on their Uropatagium. So we'll show you those in a minute as well. So these are just general characteristics that each of the two species have. So just like we did with the myotis, with the common pip and soprano pip, Natterers are always going to be on the left, Daubs are always going to be on the right. So in general, Natterers are, generally speaking, quite a pretty bat. And Daubenton's are not really a pretty bat. I think they're quite ugly. They are one of my favorites, but and they're the nicest to handle because they're the most chilled out. Natterers are a bit wild. But we're going to go through and look at some of these features individually. Now you can already see on the left-hand side what I meant by recurved ears. Can you see that? The sort of a scooped back profile of the ears of a Natterer's bat. And their ears also tend to be very pale. And then on the Daubenton's bat, the ears tend to be darker, and they don't have this recurved edge to them. So, and so here is a terrible photo of a straight Daubenton's calcar, which is the best I could do, sorry. But then the textbook S-shaped calcar on the left-hand side of the Natterer's bat, and you can see the really fine golden hairs on the patagium. On the edge of the patagium on the calcar of the Natterer's bat. Even if you have a bat in the hand and you are 100% sure that it's a Natterer's bat, I will expect you to check for the calcar and the bristles every time. Okay. Right, so this is a Natterer's bat on the left next to, well, both of these photos are Natterers on the left, Daub on the right, but this is just to illustrate a couple of things. The picture on the left, you can see that the Natterer's ears are longer. You can see that sort of flick back of the ears. And you can see the Dor-Benton's ears are smaller, not flicked back, and darker. And the same thing on the right-hand side. But what I'd like you to pay attention to on the right-hand side is that at the base of the ears of the Natterers bat on the left, there is sort of a semicircle of very pale fur. And that sort of like half moon, thanks Scott, that sort of half moon of very pale fur is diagnostic, especially if you're in a situation where your bat can't be picked up and examined like this. This was in hibernation. So it was very easy to separate the two species here based on the characteristics of the ear. So there you go. And there you go, in one hand, we've got a Natterers on the left and a Daub on the right. Even though the Daub is curling his ears back, he just doesn't have that flicked back pale ear. And you can definitely see the pale semicircle of fur at the base of the ear on this one. It's really, really, really obvious. They're not particularly different in size. Dor-Bentons are a lot more variable in size than Natterers are. Right now, we're going to look at separating Natterers versus Bechsteins, and this is something that even experienced bat workers can struggle with sometimes. But there are some very, very simple ways to do it. So generally speaking, I suppose you would look at both of these pictures. Becky has put Daubs also pee and poo a lot on you. That's true. Basically, if you take a bat out of a net or a trap and it poops all over you, chances are it's a Daub. They do tend to evacuate on your hand. Nice. So these two bats, at first glance, look very similar. They both got a long tragus. They both got big recurved ears. They both have the same kind of coloration. They both have a pale face. You could be forgiven for thinking that these were the same species, right? And they both have like a slight red tinge to the arm as well, which is another one of the features of a Natterers bat. So how do you separate these? Well, we can, looking at them, we can see that pelage is not a feature we can go on because we have similar pelage, and this is another one of those cases when you would go back to basics, rely on what my anatomical features that I'm looking for. So here we go. So separating Natterers and Bechsteins. Oh, sorry. You're looking at there's some variation in the forearm, so Bechsteins can be bigger. So basically, if it's over 44 millimeters, it's more likely to be a Bechsteins. Weight's about the same. The next one is the key, transverse folds. Should I go back and you can maybe illustrate on there? I know they're terrible photos, sorry, but you're looking at these folds on the outer edge of the ear. They're called transverse folds. And you can't see any at all on the Natterers there. But basically, in a Natterers, there's 5 to 6 transverse folds, and in a Bechsteins, 9 to 11 transverse folds. Another big thing is the tragus. It's a lot longer in the Natterers. Now, not in the overall length, but in the length compared to the length of the ear. So Natterers, tragus on the Bechsteins is about half the length of its ear, and Natterers will be longer as a proportion of the ear. Slightly subjective and variable, but the transverse folds are the way to go. So with the Bechsteins, the ears, if you take the ears and fold them down towards the nose of the bat, say the bat's head is like that, and you're folding the ears down towards the nose, the Bechsteins ears will project further forward. So greater than half the length past the nose. Oh, what we're getting at. There you go. That's
the job.
That's so good. Okay, great. You know, we were talking yesterday about you writing a natural history book.
Yeah.
I think you should do your own illustrations. 100%. Okay, and as we said, S-shaped calcar and Natterers, and a straight calcar and Bechsteins. So the other thing is as well that I wonder if I can put it in here again. What do I do with it? You got my book. Yeah, you stole my book.
Say something about it. So,
Told you it wouldn't work.
300. Okay, is that better?
Can you hear him?
Can you hear me better? Yeah, so I had a bat where I was trapping for work, and we were trapping specifically for Becksteins, and there were also natterers on site. And it wasn't me that was doing the handling, but I got asked to check if I agreed that it was a Becksteins. And I just quickly looked at one Calcar, just the one side, bent the ears forwards, and was like, yeah, it looks like a small Becksteins. Because the Calcar was straight. I didn't look at the other Calcar because we basically had an absolute ton of bats in, and I was doing the 30 odd whiskered bats or whatever we had that I had to go through and check none of them were brand. And we let that bat go, and she was a lactating female. And all of a sudden, that had massive implications for the site we were on, that we could have had a lactating female Beckstein breeding on site. But later on, when we caught a Becksteins again, quotation marks, I had that bat and I was like, well, this is clearly a Becksteins and he's a male. And I was like, okay, that's unusual because what happens with Becksteins usually is the females kick the males out of prime habitat, which we weren't in. So I was like, this is a bit curious. And I just asked, can I see a photo of that Becksteins bat? And looked at a photo of that Becksteins bat, and that Becksteins bat was actually a natterers that had a straight Calcar. If I'd have checked the other Calcar, it probably would have been S-shaped, and this bat had probably been injured in some way, and the Calcar had been, I don't know, damaged. Also worth bearing in mind, this is probably about 2 a.m. after already being on site 6 hours trapping bat. This is probably like the 40th bat we had that night. So sleep deprivation did come into it, but it's always worth saying, check both Calcars because bats do get damaged, and if you're not paying attention, you can very easily just make a flippant call because you're trying to get a bunch of other bats out the way, and then realise very swiftly later on, actually, that I think I done made a mistake there. So yeah, everyone gets one.
And that is why we expect you to go through, even if you think you know what a bat is, we expect you to just go through the decision tree of anatomical features so that you're sure that what you've got. So in theory, if you are trapping, you'll have a head of processing, and your head of processing should be making sure that you're going through those questions as you go. And the same thing if you're checking bat boxes. Okay, so you won't be thrown in the deep end in either situation, but it will be drilled into you to just constantly go through these things and just don't jump to conclusions just because you think something looks like an natterers or whatever. So, all right, so that's natterers and Beckstein. So now we are on to small myotis. I did, but you stole my book.
Oh.
I think that there is. Dun, dun, dun. Here we go. There we go. This is another right there. So that last vertebrae sticks out at the end of the tail on a Beckstein's bat and not on a natterer's bat. We will at the end as well go through like these books because we got a lot of old books. We kind of tend to rummage through things, and also at the very beginning of this talk, I shared a link to a Google Drive document, Google Drive folder where you can download some ID resources I've put in there for you. All right, onward. Small myotis. Now these are the whiskered brants and Alcathoe. We don't get Alcathoe, so we're not really going to go into much detail about that. We're basically going to focus on whiskered brants. They are a notoriously difficult species. So they're a notoriously difficult species to separate. They, especially with especially with Alcathoe in the mix as well. However, there are a number of things that we can look at to help us to do this. Having said that, when we're out on site, if we catch a small myotis, we immediately go into double-blind protocol, which we'll go into a bit more as we get closer to trapping season. But basically, the double-blind protocol is that Scott and I will both be called by Beck or by Lee back to processing, and I will identify the bat based on the anatomical features that we're about to go through with you. I will not say anything at all. I text my identification to the head of processing, whoever that is, and then Scott goes through the same process. And we only record that species as that species if our identifications are the same. And that's never not been the same. We've always agreed so far. So there are a number of features that we go on, but we always make sure that we're not making that decision in a way that leads the other person to come to the same conclusion. We do this in a double-blind way. And one of the things that we'll talk about a lot in the next talk in this series is our protocols when it comes to our recording principles and the way that we go about collecting data. So you'll learn a bit more about that next month. So here we go, small myotis. So we're going to go through a number of different features with you. Things that we look at are the penis, the tragus, ear color, pelage, but not really, protocone, which is dentition, lower and upper premolars, dentition, and then also we're going to talk about forearm measurements as well. So, penis. Remember, wee willy whiskered, big bulbous brants. So you want to talk?
So, what you can get is apparently a brant can have a small straight penis. A whiskered can never have a bulbous penis. But apparently you can get brants that have small penises as well. Although it's rare, it can happen. And just like a bit of like easier to understand, small straight penis means it's parallel sided. Large bulbous penis means it's shaped like a bell, for a better word. Yeah, so parallel sided penis.
Okay, so again, this is something that we go on a number of features, just like we did with the pipistrelles. It's just that these features can be harder to look at. And obviously, if you catch a female bat, you haven't got the penis in the mix to help you make a decision. So here are two penises. Penis on the left is wee willy whiskered, parallel sided. You can see that, and then you can see that the penis on the right hand side is like a little fat ball at the end, and that is the general difference between these two species and their penises. So whiskered on the left, brants on the right. Okay, wee willy whiskered, big bulbous brants. So then the next thing we'll look at is the ears. So we're looking at the edge of the tragus, the color of the ears, and the general pelage. Don't go on pelage, but it does help a little bit. And one of the other things that we always say, and occasionally this, bats will break the rules. They obviously haven't read the books. Is that whiskers have just got this horrendous attitude. And they're very, very noisy bats that hate being handled. Brant's bats are a lot more chilled out. So that's another thing. So don't go on pelage. Having said that, the bat on the left is a textbook whisker. The bat on the right is a textbook brants. So thinking silver and gold. So a whiskered bat has got sort of like usually dark ears and sort of like a silvery frosted look to its pelage. The brants bat on the right hand side has got paler ears and a sort of more of a golden look to its pelage. Don't go on pelage. It's just a thing that if you make your decision based on the anatomical features, then the pelage can help you to feel more confident if the pelage is in line with your identification. Having said that, if we look back up here, go back to the top, right? So the bat on the top right hand side is a whiskered bat, but has golden pelage and ears that are half dark and half pale. So they don't always. Yeah.
You might as well. Whiskered look more like brants as they get older.
Yeah, so yeah, Scott's just saying whiskered look like more like brants as they get older. But there you go. So this is your textbook, and also you can probably see that the bat on the left is screaming. You know, that's kind of textbook as well. So the next thing that we start to look at is the protocone and the rest of the dentition, and these are the things that we rely on the most heavily when it comes to this identification, particularly if you have got a female bat, because you don't have the penis to look at.
But again, it's not the complete lack of a protocone. Whiskereds can have a protocone. It's just when they have a protocone, it does not descend below the premolar in front of it. So the premolar on P3 does not descend below P2. That's right, isn't it? That's right, number way. Whatever.
We're going to show you. We're going to show you photos. I mean, there we go. Okay, so protocone. So this is a typical whiskered bat dentition. So this is the location of the protocone.
I was wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So usually there's nothing to look at. You'll be looking at a whiskered bat more often than not, and there's nothing to look at. And so until you have a Brandt's bat in the hand and you can see what you're looking at, it's like, I remember when I first started doing bat care years and years ago, I didn't know if I had males or females. And then I got a male and I was like, whoa, every bat I've had before now has been a girl, because it's quite obvious when it's a boy. And it's the same thing here. So until you see a Brandt's bat and see a protocone in the hand, you're looking for something that's not there. And so it can be very difficult. But if you look here on the right hand side, the protocone is at the base of this tooth. Yeah, so what Scott is illustrating is about whether the tip of the protocone is below the tip of P3. Most of the time in our experience, the whisker don't tend to have protocones, but it's one of those things that's an exception, and it's why we go on a number of features. So also bats can have wonky teeth. True story. Yeah. Okay, so here we're looking here at the protocone, and if you're looking from the inside of the mouth, which is what we tend to do, is to turn the bat on his back and then have a look for the protocone there. These are the only half decent photos that I have got of bats in the same position, whiskered on the left, Brandt's on the right, as usual. And you can actually see that there is no protocone to speak of on the whiskered bat, and you can just see the little bump of the protocone on the Brandt's bat on the right. And you hit it with a little. Okay, so this is where you're looking. So this is not the only dentition that we look at. Other things are the lower teeth. So we're going to come back to here. So if we come back up, so in Brandt's bats, P3 and P2 are more or less the same size. In whiskered bats, P3 is smaller than P2. So if we go back to this illustration, so P2 is the one up front, then P3. So this is like premolar 1, premolar 2, premolar 3. Yeah. So P2 and P3, they're these two that we're looking at. And if you can see here in this illustration on the left-hand side, P3 is smaller than P2. And in the illustration of the Brandt's bat on the right-hand side, P3 and P2 are more or less the same size. Okay. So obviously this is really, really bloody difficult with a bat that does not want to be held. So a lot of the time what we do is we take the bat and we take photographs as quickly as we can of the mouth, and then we try and do what we can by zooming in on photographs, and that tends to be a really good way to do it, which minimizing the stress on the animal. So if we then come back down, so what do we think this is here? Yeah, 50-50. Throw your hat in the ring, people. Come on.
Elizabeth said whiskered.
Anybody else? Anyone agree? Disagree?
I think whiskered.
Yeah, this is a whiskered bat. So the P3 is clearly smaller than P2, so it's a whiskered bat. There's also no protocone, but you can't. I mean, I guess you can kind of make it out that there's no protocone, but again, it's like I said, you look at something that's not there, so it's really hard. So, did I do? I didn't go into the tragus. Hold on a minute. What we're gonna do is gonna go back up. I didn't talk about the edge of the tragus. Here we go. So this is a terrible photo. Basically, you're looking at the outer edge of the tragus, and obviously the angle at which you're looking at the bat can affect that. So a photo is not very good for this, because you have to get the exact angle. But basically, you'll be looking at on a whisker bat, this outer edge of the tragus would be straight or even slightly concave, whereas the Brandt's bat, the leading edge of the tragus, would be slightly convex, as in curving in towards the head. Okay. So yeah, Scott's illustrations are actually better here than the actual photos, because the photos are at odd angles, and obviously they move their ears around and it can just make things look a bit odd, but generally speaking, so we are going for the penis, if there is one, the coloration of the ears, the coloration of the pelage, the attitude, the angle of the outer edge of the tragus, whether or not there's a protocone, and the orientation of these lower teeth. So it's kind of a nightmare trying to do this, and trying to do this when you're stressed and the animal is stressed and there's other bats, and you're trying to do this in a double blind way in which is not leading any of your colleagues to come to the same conclusions. So so it's tough, but so far we've not disagreed at all. I guess we'll find out when we get the DNA analysis done, whether we've been correct or not. But we've been pretty confident so far. It just, there is obviously always a remote possibility that we'll get an Alcathoe one day, and then that will really throw a spanner in the works. But so, do you want to take it over for this bit? Or?
I thought I was doing the.
All right. Okay. So there is a paper, a Czech study looking at the forearm length of whiskered and Brandt's bats. And for some reason, this is not very well known, and I don't really know why. But with a 95% confidence limit when sex is taken into account, you can separate whiskered and Brandt's based on their forearm length. So if you have a look at this, so the top two lines, whiskered female and Brandt's female. So Brandt's female, there's no overlap in the length of their forearm. So the biggest a whiskered female forearm will be is 35.2, and the smallest a Brandt's female will be is 35.7. And the longest whiskered forearm will be is 34.2, and the shortest a Brandt's will be is 34.9. So we always take the measurement of the forearm as well. Even in so this year we've not been taking biometric measurements for bats. We've still taken them for whiskered. So this is not 100%. This is a 95%. But it's interesting, and I think it's a very, very interesting study. And so far, all of our bats have complied with this based on our identifications. So but there's always that 5%. So Scott was drawing your attention to the fact that there's also Alcathoe. I have put this paper into the sharing folder for these training courses, so you can download it and have a read for yourself. Alcathoe are a smaller bat, and so it's not really because we don't get them here. It's not really relevant for us, but it may be relevant for you if you do work in other areas in the UK as you go forward doing that work. So, you want to go through all of your? Did you want to do these, or do you want me to just run through them? No, these are just the vagrants and whatnot.
Vagrants, yeah. Well done.
I'm gonna sit here.
Yeah.
Right.
You're good.
Do you want more juice?
Can everyone hear me? Right. So I'm going to go through vagrants and surprise bats that you can get. The chat is more. ... And then chat. So vagrants, things that you're not expecting to get. Methusias pipistrelle, not really a vagrant, but they are a bat that you can often not be expecting to get. They're massively migratory, so they cover. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's things that aren't really in our area as well. So Methusias are massively migratory. They cover massive ranges. They are an absolutely huge pipistrelle. I have only seen one. It was gotten out of a bat box, and it was like it was doing the thanatosis thing, pretend to be dead that all pipistrelles do, but it was like a little potato. This bat, it was huge. It was like towards Eliza's size in comparison. Is the only thing I can really gauge it to. When you get a nice big one, they're really quite impressive. Like it says here, forearm up to 37 millimeters. Also, the forearm is furry underneath, which is again a similar thing to Nyctilus. So your Lysa's bat, your noctules, and your greater noctule all have furry underarms. Barbastelle. Really cannot confuse this bat with anything else in England. There is only one bat that looks like this, and that is the Barbastelle. It's dark all over with frosted tips, which is where its name comes from, which literally means star. So it's like the starry bat. The ears meet in the middle, which is the defining feature for these bats. No other UK species ears touch in the middle. And then you have the broad tragus, which is a bit of a weird shape as well. It's triangular here. And they've also got this weird little doodah at the end of the ear. I don't know if you can draw on that, Morgan. I don't know what that's specifically called. It probably does have a name. But they have this weird little doodah at the end of the ears. And they do have a post-calcareal lobe.
How do we draw on it?
You press that on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so they have this weird little doodah at the end of the ear that they no idea what that's for. But yeah. Alcathoe's bat. Alcathoe's bat has only been very recently discovered, like 2010. Was it 2010? 2000. Yeah, I think it was 2010 when it was discovered. It's small myotis, whiskered Brandt's type, and it has features combined of the two of them. So it has a parallel-sided penis with. No, it has a protocone and a parallel-sided penis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it has a protocone and it has a parallel-sided penis, like a wee whiskered. Which makes it very difficult even to tell them apart where there are Brandts, because you can have a Brandt that has a straight-sided penis. But there is something really important to bear in mind with your whiskered Alcathoe Brandt is a lot of the things you hear people say. So, for example, Brandts can have parallel-sided penises. A lot of these descriptions were made prior to the discovery of Alcathoe. So you need to consistently be aware that whenever you're reading a book or you're reading a paper and it talks about telling whiskered apart from Brandts, was Alcathoe defined at that point? Did we know it was a species? Because otherwise you've got three species in the mix. So that's always worth bearing in mind. It's also a lot smaller than both of them, as Morgan touched on earlier. Currently, it's only known in 2 spaces in England. It's known in no, 2 or 3. It's known.
Well,
It's
this
chapter
morning,
box.
no, yesterday in the Hereford Bat Atlas, which is 2006,
Okay. Well, I'd like to know where from. Yeah. I'm always dubious of records like that because it's like it's one of those things. Would I be brave enough to call that about a DNA sample? No. So yeah, Alkathoris, something you always need to bear in mind. And Greater Mounted, these things are massive. Yeah, that's a Natterers underneath him. Like they are huge. They hang free like a BLE will sometimes. There is only one individual, one male that is known in the whole area, in the whole of the UK. They used to breed in England. There was a massive maternity colony and it was burnt to the ground. And since then, they have not returned as far as we know. So there's only the one lonely male that hangs around. I do believe he does have a name, BCT name him. And it's worth noting that where in that area where he is covered on the on a special swarming license for if he is ever trapped. Basically, they can't handle hibernating bats. They can't put a radio tag on a hibernating bat, but they can if they catch him in a mist net. So they are trying to figure out where he goes because they only know he's there when he's hibernating. And I don't think he's turned up there for like a year or so now, like maybe 2 years. So who knows? He might have finally kicked it. In Lesser Mouseid in this presentation. Lesser Mouseid are near enough exactly the same size, and telling them apart requires you to measure the teeth, a bunch as well as like a bunch of other things, and it can be incredibly difficult to do. I've never done it. I just know of it because I know some people that have gone and helped with some trapping of I think it was Neopetric they trapped. They did swarming there.
We didn't get when we did hibernation. We didn't get Lesser Mouseid.
But you can only tell from dentition. So
I'd be surprised if we were recording them all as
yeah.
if we didn't know that we would get.
Yeah, it might not have been near Petric where they were trapping them. Then I know someone that was trapping them anywhere, somewhere. I think it was Romania. Actually, no, it was Romania. And they were basically telling me you have to tell apart from the measuring teeth, and it's very difficult. Although to be honest, if you find one of oh god, I've gone the wrong way. How do I go back? Roll up. Okay, yeah. However, if you ever find one of these bats, there'd be no mistake in it. It's a Myotis the size of a damn noctule. Right. Greater horseshoe bats, Rhinoceros ferrocrinum. Again, you're not going to be confusing these with anything else larger than lesser horseshoe. Forearms are minimum 51 millimeters. People often describe lesser horseshoes as looking like a little plum hanging from something, whereas these guys are like a little pear. You can tell them apart from when they're free hanging. You can often tell them apart by how they hold the wings. Lessers tend to completely cover their faces, whereas greaters tend to be a bit more like that. Yeah, they are coming further north. I do believe they've recorded the first time in Kent in a long time last season.
Down here, this is where we went.
In Herefordshire, yeah. So they are increasing their range, just like Lessers. Yeah. So Lessers have now been recorded in the Greater Manchester area. Greaters are coming up north as well. There's also some people often talk about if greater horseshoes actually eat lesser horseshoe babies, which is like a thing. They've found the DNA in drop-ins or something like that. Although it's never been witnessed, but people do think they might eat lesser horseshoe babies. And there's some anecdotal evidence that greater horseshoes can turf lesser horseshoes out of roosts. So could be. Yeah, bullies. And then the grey long-eared bat. The bat that some people is so rare, some people claim probably doesn't actually exist. These bats are incredibly rare. They require special pasture to forage on. They are only known to roost in brick buildings in England. Yeah, they will not use mitigation. You cannot mitigate for this species. If you're a consultant ever who's unlucky enough to come across one of these, you ain't doing anything with it. It's like straight right off to the work. Pretty much, unless you are like one of like probably 3 people in England that have enough experience working with them to do that. So greyer pelage than Bacotus eritus, but obviously when you've got a young BLE, they are buff, so they tend to be grayer. You can get it through measuring the thumb. Their thumbs are shorter, about 6 millimeters, and the tragus is broader, about 5.5 millimeters. You also, BLEs tend to do what's referred to like as ram's horning with their ears. They'll fold their ears back, and they won't always pop them straight up, whereas GLEs will just have their ears boomed straight out pretty much all the time. Although again, they can fold them back. That's just like a behavioural thing, I think. And then vagrants, bats that pop up on the coast. This is a Cole's pipistrelle Morgan had. These bats can get blown over for like El Ninos or brought over on shipping containers.
And there's a population.
Yep, there's a population of these in Jersey, which means technically they are in UK borders.
Well,
Disputed, yeah. Yeah, like some gulls, yeah, and savvies. They get savvies on the coast at some point. Yeah. So yeah, these are bats that are not classed as breeding in England, but they do come over every now and again. European free-tailed bat, you're not going to confuse this with anything else. It's like a mini Brazilian free-tailed bat. It's the only thing that looks like it. Joffrey's bat. Joffrey's bat, when I was telling you about the natterers I had that had a straight calcar, is my first panicked reaction of, oh my god, what if I've just trapped a female lactating Joffrey's bat? Because Joffrey's bats basically look very similar to natterers. The Cull's pipistrelle, which Morgan's shown up, it has a gap in its teeth, which is like a distinctive factor. Oh,
kink in the penis.
okay, they've got kinked penis. Yeah, party-coloured bat, one of the best bats. You are again, vagrants they've been found in care. A Joffrey's bat is in care right now in Sussex. Bat carers have that in Sussex. They reckon it's been washed over and found exhausted, but they have also trapped and captured and confirmed Joffrey's bats in Bath. So they're coming pretty far inland. I think they are. I reckon Joffrey's bat breed in England without a doubt, and it's just a fact of your average ecologist that just thinks it's a natterers. But anyway, then you got Savvy's pipistrelle, which again, not a pipistrellus. It's its own thing, and they have been recorded on acoustic detectors and stuff like that on the coasts. And then pond bats. Pond bats, yeah, you will not tell a Dorbenton's call apart from a pond bat call. So you've got no hope of telling them apart on acoustic detectors. You're only going to tell them apart by having them in the hand, and even then they can be difficult to tell apart, from my understanding.
Yeah, although they just could tell. I don't know what how they were differentiating.
Yeah. I think there is like a jizz thing that you can probably get if you're seeing them all the time.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, you again, another thing that they're probably come out. Yeah, yeah. So they're probably like a much more common thing than we think. A lot of vagrant bats are probably a lot more common than we think.
Is
that it for today?
We do questions and books.
Right. So we do questions.
Right.
Swap over.
All right. Okay. So that is it for the slides. We are gonna look at that for timing. 12:12. Bloody hell. So I was gonna just basically show you a few books. I always do this one. Deets, baby deets, particularly, and then I have just obviously noted it to hell and back. This is basically the Bible that we use for all of our ID. I have uploaded, if you'll see, if you scroll to the top of the chat, I have uploaded a folder and I've put in some ID resources in there. I will keep loading that up over the next couple weeks. So there's a Stebbings illustrated. I can send you links to these, but I don't know whether a lot of these are out of print. So guide to Europe, and then some more cool stuff in here. conservation of bats by Stebbings. Look at the little face. So this one has got some cool keys and stuff in it, but most of this is about conservation status of bats. The stuff at, I think which ones have got which bits in. This one has got lots of nice cool illustrations, but it's very dated. I also have, where's my cover for this? The cover for that. Oh, my cover is falling apart, but very old British Mammals book has a very old key in it, which doesn't have any grey long-eared, doesn't have any Soprano pipistrelle, doesn't have any serotine either. Like,
So
yeah,
mean
there's
that-
like nothing in there.
So then is asked to send the Google Drive folder in the WhatsApp. so you
Yes,
can
I will.
download that.
Yep. And then get this, if you can get this, it's really good for all the mammals, but one of the really cool things is illustrations of all of the skulls of all of the bats. And then other cool bat stuff. It has all of the dental formulae of all the different bats. Illustrations of common versus Nethusiast pipistrelle dentition.
Also worth mentioning the year it's published
The 79, I think, this one.
prior to the Soprano.
Yeah, so there won't be Soprano pips in here, and there won't be Alcathoe and stuff like that. You guys gotta bear that in mind when you're looking at old stuff. But some really cool, I will try and take some photos and upload some of these really good anatomy stuff in there. So those are basically, and then obviously the ID keys that I have uploaded into the folder as well. So, any questions? Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Good sign, bad sign? I don't know. If you have any any questions, that's what the WhatsApp chat is there for. So just let us know. I will upload this so that you can have access to look at it and listen to it again. Once we have done both of the training courses, I'll upload the slides from this as well. Actually, I probably could just do the slides from this one. Yeah, I'll upload the slides from this as well into the same folder. So for now, that is it. The next thing that we have in 2 weeks is Sounds Analysis Sunday. And then 2 weeks after that, I think we have the next one of these, which will be all about sexual assessment. You'll learn a lot more about the reproductive cycle, aging bats, ectoparasites, assessing condition, and also then we're going to go into how we approach recording the data that we gather. And this is applicable to trapping and bat box checks. So I'm just wondering what comes to how do I normally get to identify the species? Like 5 seconds. Now we so yeah, when you have a bat in the hand, so we have a general target. So Eurobats. What's the Eurobats target? Is it 15 minutes or 30 minutes?
15 minutes or something.
Sure, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I think Eurobats guidelines suggest that we shouldn't have a bat in the hand for more than 30 minutes. So generally speaking, and you'll see this when we come to next time when we're talking about our whole process, is at every stage of identification and recording, in between every stage, you do a stress assessment on the bat. If the bat is stressed, it lets go. It's like when we're talking about in your induction, that your welfare is the first thing, then bat welfare, then the data. So at every stage, we're assessing the bat's welfare. So sometimes if a bat is stressed, you're not going to get any time to identify the bat, and you just have to just go, right, fair enough, the bat's welfare comes first, and I don't get to learn from this one, and that's fine. But if you have a very chilled out bat, then that's fine, and we can go through all the process that we need to go through. Eurobats guidelines is, I think it's 30 minutes per bat. Ours is 10, so we don't want to have a bat for more than 10 minutes. And in particular, we do things like we prioritize. If we usually process bats in the order in which they come in, But if, for example, we get 5 noctules coming in and they're on the washing line in the order that they're going to get processed, and then we get a pipistrelle in, because pipistrelles have got a much higher surface area to body mass ratio, they lose heat a lot faster than a noctule will. So we will always bump up a smaller bat to the top of the queue, just for welfare reasons. So the answer to that question is hopefully as long as it takes, no more than 10 minutes. But obviously we're stress assessing the bat, every bat, all the time. So the same for bat box checkers. Yeah, bat box checking is a little bit different because the bats tend to be less stressed. They've been torpid, they've been sleeping, and so you're not handling a bat that has just flown into a net and gotten really stressed out. So it tends to be a less frenetic process when we're doing bat box checks. The bats are already quite sleepy and chilled out, and so we tend to have a little bit more time. But having said that, because we are doing oral swabbing for volatile chemicals, our process of handling bats is slightly longer than it would normally be, because we have to take those samples. And so we basically, obviously you're going to be teaching, you're going to be taught, we're going to be teaching you all the way through handling bats, whether you're trapping or whether you're in doing bat boxes. But the most important thing is your welfare, bat welfare, then the data, then the teaching. So that's just the way that it has to be, the order that it comes in. But you will have a little bit more time if you're bat box checking. And also they tend to be bat box checking. We almost always mostly get noctules, and so they are bigger bats, and they deal with the stress really well of being handled, and also they're bigger, so we don't have to worry about them getting cold. And obviously it's daytime, so you have to worry about certain times of the year, like early spring, and then towards the end of the trapping season, we have to worry about the ambient temperatures as well, and whether that's going to negatively affect the bats. So it's not really an issue with bat box checks. All right, I think that might be it. Okay, everybody, just I will post the link to this when I've uploaded it, and I will repost the link to the sharing folder for all the resources. All right, see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Thanks. See ya.
Thank you, Morgan. Bye.